spotlight is often on men when it comes to speeches. Think about the great speeches you've heard, and who comes to mind? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy. Where are the women? That's what our next guest was wondering. Speaking While Female, Speech Bank founder and curator Donna Rubin joins me after uncovering some great women speakers that she wrote a book about. Good morning. So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Okay, I'm curious, how did you end up digging for great women speakers?
Well, I was a speech coach and a speaker myself and leading speaking workshops, and I realized we always talked about the men. We always talked about the men speakers, and women need role models too. So I started to dig into history, into the archives, into out-of-print books, traveling around to different institutions looking for speeches by women.
Okay, why do you think that we haven't heard about great women speakers like we hear about great men speakers? Why is that?
Well, I think sometimes just history repeats itself. People just pick the same sources over and over and over and don't do the work of really thinking who was really speaking at the time. If you look at the old newspapers, you can see that women were speaking all the time, but they just weren't, their words weren't recorded, we just don't remember them.
How long did it take you to do all this research?
Well, I've been working on it for several years.
Okay, so I was looking at the cover of your book, and you've got Billie Jean King endorsing the book, so that's not bad. So who all did you find? Who are some of the great women speakers you found? And maybe can you quote a line or two from a couple that you really like? First of all, do you have a favorite?
People always ask me what's my favorite, and I always say I don't have a favorite because I'm constantly looking for more speeches and finding more. I'm so obsessed. So I always say my favorite is the one that I just dug up at 2 this morning and added to my speech bank.
I love that. But do you have a couple of, are there a couple that really stand out to you? And what are a couple of lines from their speeches that make them stand out?
Well, I'll give you two that your audience probably haven't heard of.
Okay.
Most people don't know that the first speakers in America were indigenous women. So in many indigenous tribes, women were leaders and their voices were accepted as voices of authority. So in my book, in 1781, Nanyehi, who was a Cherokee woman, speaks in treaty negotiations with the Anglo settlers. And she says to them, "Our people are your people. Let our cry is all for peace."
Wow, and we don't think about a woman speaking in that situation at that time. That is so it's really a window into history also. So
Absolutely.
Who's another one?
Well, skipping forward for 350 years, Temple Grandin, who many people might know because she's an advocate for people on the autism spectrum and also for neurodiversity. She's just written a new book about neurodiversity, and she argues that, of course, we should accept people who have all kinds of different ways of thinking and perceiving the world.
Because they are simply different.
Because they're different, and they all add to the world in meaningful ways. So in 2007, she gave a speech that I have in this book. I think this is the first time any of her speeches have ever been reproduced, and she was so thrilled to be in the book. And she talks about the fact that a lot of people on the autism spectrum are more interested in things than people. They're not social, they're interested in delving into the mechanics of things, how things work. And she says, back in the caveman days, the cavemen were interested in things, and she said it wasn't a social person who invented the wheel.
So interesting. I love this. So you want this book to be in schools. Why? Why is it important?
Well, I want it in schools and I want it in libraries across the country because it's so important that this supplements our history books, our textbooks, our social studies books that don't mention women speakers. So if you're a girl growing up today, you might have the impression that women never gave a speech.
Right. It's a window into how we got to where we are today. You're making an appearance here. Where can people see you?
Tonight at the Allen Public Library at 7 p.m., I'll be talking about this project and signing some books. And then next Wednesday night, I'll be at Interrobang Books on Lover's Lane talking about it and signing books.
Really cool. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks. Okay, for more information on Speaking While Female, go to speakingwhilefemale.co.